everybody, welcome back. You've got us again. We're in the middle of or coming close to the end of our digital discipleship IMMERSED journey. I sure hope that everyone has enjoyed, gaining all of the information that's been provided. I know it's definitely been a lot. There's definitely been a lot of good subject matter that's been covered. So
a lot of content.
A lot of word a day.
Something that you may have to go back through and take the journey through it again.
That's right.
You see what I did there?
I like that. I like the plug there too. So today's really going to kind of be the wrap up, right? So this is discussionary day.
The final wrap. They do have the day of reflection with a short video, but this is the final discussion through the topics of it. And then tomorrow, which will be Sunday, they will have a reflection time that will just kind of wrap up the whole thought in one kind of concise. But this is the final discussion that we're doing.
Awesome. And y'all caught the discussion from last time, or at least I hope you did, unless y'all are fast forwarding. Better not be fast forwarding. But some of the things that we had touched on with that first week was really the, how to research scripture, all the things that you need to know. I know that you've already all heard about that.
Getting tools.
Correct.
To know how to be a follower of Christ.
Right, absolutely. How to digest it on your own and read through it and really comprehend it, right? And that was a lot of, we talked a lot about the Old Testament, and a lot of the Old Testament discussions really were foreshadowing for what was to come in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Lots of cleansing that was done in different ways. Sometimes
to show the cleansing needed in our hearts and our spirits. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at some points the whole planet was cleansed with water. So I mean, So, but there was a lot surrounding that, and then again, that's foreshadowing leading up to the New Testament and leading up to the arrival of Christ.
Yeah, which is mostly what we covered this week.
Right.
Even though there were aspects of what we talked about this week that obviously had the Old Testament foreshadowing still in there, like the wedding ceremony and like the idea of being born again and like the idea of death to life. All the things we covered this week, they had some Old Testament stuff, but we really focused in on what Jesus was trying to bring about and show and do for us from his time all the way into the early church and now. And this practice of baptism being such a big, huge piece of it, which is sometimes weird for us to think like how a physical act can be a big, huge piece, but yet we can see that in our natural lives that there are physical acts that we do that are huge, like a wedding ceremony.
Absolutely.
Or a birth. If someone says special occasion to do, what is it? It's someone's having a baby, someone's getting married.
That's
right? And in an odd way, the reverse, right? A funeral, which is we look at that from life to death, but God says actually
it's death
to life in this. And so those are huge monumental occasions that we have these things that we participate and do. And so it shouldn't be odd to us to have something like that in our spiritual walk that is a monumentous occasion that creates a movement in us with a whole new walk of life. Because
a cornerstone of our spiritual
walk. And a cornerstone of life, markers in our life. Because if you think about this, you have a child. I have a child. I have children. I got more than one, I guess. Those, if you think about what happens in those monumental occasions, marriage, children, it changes and alters the very course of your life.
Oh, completely.
You no longer, just heads up for people, if you're not married or you're thinking about getting married, you don't keep living the same way you lived before, right? Like
it's a new daily rhythm of life.
Yes. So many things, right? You have to think about life differently. You have to live it differently. You have to learn to compromise, all these things in marriage.
Absolutely.
And when you have a kid, guess what happens?
Same thing.
You no longer live the same way. You don't spend money the same way.
No.
You don't get to have the same pattern of sleep for when they're babies, right? Like,
if no one's told you all of this, these are things you should know.
These are life hacks. Life becomes radically different.
These are free tips. This isn't even part of the whole mess. These are free tips for you.
But if you think about that, that's in fact exactly what we should look at our spiritual life like. This is a monumentous occasion to be baptized. It's the decision to the wedding ceremony to be this new birth, which means life itself has to and will radically change. And the one obviously that's near and dear to my heart is the ceremony, the wedding idea. because it speaks so much on so many levels. But in fact, like we were just talking about, you can't get married one day, do the ceremony, and then just the next day be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm still gonna act like a bachelor. Like,
yeah, I don't plan on coming home, just FYI. That's
yeah, I'm
okay,
gonna go hang out with the boys
fine.
and try to pick up a chick.
I mean, we got
your wife would
married.
be like, wait, what? Like, because that's the whole point.
We got married. Look, I got the ring on. Why is
Like,
this
I
okay?
thought that was the deal. And it's like, no. In fact, your whole life structure changes. Your thought life changes. Your actions change. Everything changes because of the person that you chose to say, I tie my life to. And that's Christ. And we're tying our life.
You want to do it. Like, it's not, do I have to? It's, I want to.
Yeah. Well, and you were saying it just before the camera was rolling. Like, if we're still asking that question.
Right. Yeah, I think like, you know, you always use the marriage example, but I think like, so as we've gone through the journey, if we've gotten to this point, and there's anyone out there that's still like, yeah, but do I have to do it? Then I just ask that you go back, start the journey over again, and rewatch it.
Yeah, you're missing everything about what this is.
Because at the end of the day, and for me at least, it is that heart motive. It's not that I have to do it. It's because I want to.
In fact, it's the relationship side, not the religious, I have to do these things.
Correct.
And it would be kind of like, I remember this, I'll tell a quick story.
Okay.
So to show you the difference in a want to of an act and a have to.
Okay.
So when I asked my wife to marry me, I wanted to do the wedding. I wanted to be married. I wanted to do the thing, right?
Of course.
Now, as I'm sure husband and wives know, you argue about how that's going to happen, but you know, indeed, I wanted to.
You discuss it.
Because it was something I wanted to be a part of.
Right.
But yet I had to be convinced by my parents and everybody to go to my high school graduation. Because I didn't want anything to do with school or anything, so I was like, this is dumb.
Right.
I saw no point in it,
Don't
right?
want to participate in this.
And so, to me, that's kind of like when there's a want and a desire and a heart change into this, you want to do the action, you want to do the things as a representation, as a repayment.
Yeah.
When you don't care about it, or you're asking, what do I have to do to be done, right? You know, like we're not trying to get credit hours on earth to get somewhere. Like that's not how this works. It's a walking with relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole point, you know, it's like if we're still asking, do I have to, how is this? It's like we're missing the way that it's supposed to speak to us. We're missing that prideful joy of ready to be one with our partner. We're missing that new birth experience of, wow, there's a whole bright new world in front of me and I got to learn how to live it.
Right.
And we're missing the idea of that actually everything we were doing before this was ending in death. Everything I thought was life actually was nothing. And there's a bright new life in front of me that I got to learn how to live. And so I got to stay close to my partner.
Yeah.
And all of this is shown in baptism. I mean, that's mind-boggling in true fact to think about how one act speaks to us on so many levels to say, this is the beginning of something.
Right. Well, in a sense, right? I mean, we mentioned marriage, right? You mentioned it a lot because it's a huge thing. But we are, if I'm thinking correctly, we are the bride.
We are the bride.
Right?
We are the bride.
So I mean, that's I think that's the whole thing, right? How do you treat your bride? What do you want to do these things, or you should?
Yeah,
you should.
Marriage advice.
Again, that's a freebie.
But in fact, like it is exactly that. And in the ancient times, as we discussed with the wedding and the ceremony, it's like things were prepared for the bride to accept. There was the bride did the bathing and got the new clothes, which we still do, like the dress and all of the things and the bouquets. We even do things to this day that represent and show these ideas. And it was like, because why are we the bride and why is he the husband? Because he prepared all of this for us, and all we had to do is say, I do and I will, right? Like like for rich or for poor, like we got to think of these things. Like I'll follow Christ no matter what it costs because I've married to him. That's the idea. Yeah. And I think that's supposed to speak to us the most in the ceremony idea. But as we've talked about the born again side. Yes. There was one piece to me that was even kind of a new way. I mean, and new in the relative terms of like I grew up in the church. It's so funny when we're dumb and we think, I know this. I've heard it before. I understand it. I got it, Yeah. And sometimes we can approach that, and we need to check ourselves if we're ever approaching like, I know salvation, baptism, communion, I know all about prayer. That stuff. I do it all the time. I got it, right? Because in fact, the idea of being born again which I've heard my entire life. Like I can't, since I was physically born, I probably had been around people talking about it, right? Like just because I'm born and raised in this.
It's your whole life. But
I never once thought of, until the last several years of my life, I had never once thought of the idea of, why did Jesus say born again and use birth? And why didn't he use all the other examples? Why didn't he talk about cleansing? Why didn't he use death to life? Why didn't he talk about these other things? Why did he use born again? And the idea of understanding that birth, what is required from the baby in birth? Nothing. The baby doesn't work to be born. The mother pushes, the mother does the work. And so Jesus actually was putting this idea of saying, you got to be born again, which means you got to rest and have faith in knowing that all the work that you were having to do in the purification rituals, because he was talking to Nicodemus.
Yes, yeah.
You're not working for this birth. Someone else is doing that. Wow. And that just spoke to me, because it's like, whoa, that's what it means to like be restful in faith, you know?
Yeah, no, and that's, you know, I said this in one of our other discussions, but it's a living, breathing document to me, because I don't care how many times you've read it, I don't care how many times you look back through it, the meanings can be so different.
Oh, yeah.
Because you could read the same thing over and over again, and one day you read it and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I remember the time when I was reading, the most popular verse of all time, which is in actually John 3. So John 3:16 happens right after Nicodemus, right? Like that, all that. And for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Like, all right, I know this. Whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Great. I can quote it. I can say it. I know this. But then I remember one day I was reading, I was like, wait, that's in red. I didn't Jesus is saying
Jesus is saying this.
Okay, wait, that changes a lot, right? You know, and then in fact, looking at it and defining words and using historical context and understanding, like, for God so loved the world. Wait, I thought the world was a bad thing. Oh, this word world doesn't mean exactly the same thing. It means the way man ought to be. What was the way man ought to be? Holy, dedicated, righteous, in right standing with God. So what does he want to do? He wants to cleanse us. He loved being with us so much.
Right.
You know, and so here we are back at baptism. It's kind of like, it's almost so central to the Christian faith and to the Christian walk to say, I want to do this act as that huge gesture to say, I want to be with you.
I want this. I'm going to lay down my life and pursue the one that you have for me.
Which is, in fact, discipleship, which Jesus never called people to say, you never see Jesus walking around and being like, hey, you believe I'm the Son of God? And they're like, yeah. He's like, cool, you're good. He's like, you do. Well, then that means you must change, because follow me. Like, let's go.
Terrible reference, but you mean it's not like the Buddy Christ?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so much more to this walk, and it's not a walk of must.
Right.
It's a walk of will. I want
this.
In view of what was given and done for me. And not just for me, but to me and with me and in me. Like, in view of that kind of love. Then I want to return it in kind.
Yeah, shouldn't I want to do this? It shouldn't be I have to. It shouldn't be me questioning, is this necessary? Is this going to get me into heaven? Does this give me the keys to the gate? Again, if that's what you're thinking, and that's all you're thinking,
we're so far off the mark.
So far off.
Because the mark is in fact something other than God, other than Christ, other than the person. And we know this from marriage. We know that, right? Like, is the mark of getting married just to be married, or is it the person? If it's just to be married, it will fall apart. If it's the person, you strive to do, right? Then in fact, what about having a baby? I just want to have a baby to have a baby. No, it's because of the relationship. And in fact, then it's like, oh, any old kid will do. Like, okay, well, no. You can't just swap kids out like 6 months in, right? In fact, even a mother who's never actually met in the physical, and you say, okay, well, you just brought this child full term, 9 months, but we're going to give you that one instead. No, that's why, because the baby is the mark, not just the get where I want to be. And some people may be like, that's a weird analogy, but it works.
It works.
And so the person has to be the mark. That would be like, we call each other friends. And I'm like, yeah, but Mike, like, I don't have to hang out with you.
Right.
like doesn't require that to be your friend. And then you'd be like, wait, what? So you don't want to hang out with me? And be like, no, like, I don't have to.
Feel a little dejected here.
And so we need to sometimes just put those relational aspects on with our discipleship of Christ, you know? And then, in fact, take it to that next level and say, not only is there that relational side of friendship and all of these things, there's also the fact of we're talking the creator of the universe.
Yes.
And so, you know what? He probably knows better than I do. And so if he says immerse, I'll immerse.
Absolutely.
If he says this will teach me something, I believe it, and I will participate and do it, and then let it wash over me and speak to me.
Right, and do
which is what this whole journey is.
And
about.
do it gladly so.
Yeah.
Gladly so. Yeah.
Which is the entire idea of this journey. So I think, and I hope this has spoke to everyone, and I hope that even the reflection time tomorrow continues to speak to you. And again, there's a reason we call these journeys.
Yes.
Go back through this. Keep this in your docket. Maybe you do it once a year and say, I just need to remember this baptism journey. Or in fact, you may have friends that's like, hey, like they don't understand this baptism thing that they haven't participated or they have or they're thinking about doing. Like, hey, use this as a tool to where you can walk with them through it. Use the actual videos in the app, or actually just do it with them without it. Sit there and do studies with them and begin to immerse yourself in this.
Go back and digest it and share it with others, because that's what it means to be a disciple.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
all right.
Well, guys, hope you enjoy your reflection time tomorrow. Remember, we have lots of other journeys, so go join one and let's continue on this journey through following Christ.